You could buy a hot dog for $1 on 42nd Street, catch a midnight show at a theater that doesn't exist anymore, and ride a subway covered in graffiti without checking your phone once. That New York? It's gone. There was a time when the city felt alive in a completely different way. Chaotic, gritty, rebellious. Tokens clinked through turnstiles, steam rose from every corner, and danger walked hand in hand with freedom. The New York of the 80s and 90s wasn't pretty, but it had soul. And what's gone now isn't just places, it's an entire rhythm of life that won't return. Ready to remember the city before it got sanitized? Let's go. Gem Spa wasn't just a corner store, it was an institution. Located on St. Mark's Place and 2nd Avenue, it served up New York's most iconic egg cream. No egg, no cream, just magic. And acted as a meeting point for punks, poets, artists, and East Village eccentrics. In the 1980s and 90s, it represented the gritty soul of downtown Manhattan, where counterculture wasn't a trend, but a way of life. Graffiti-tagged awnings, the scent of newspapers and soda syrup, the quiet comfort of chaos, Gem Spa was all of that. When it closed in 2020, it felt like the last breath of an era. What we lost wasn't just a store, but a portal into a New York that dared to be weird without apology. Long before luxury fashion became a global machine, Cheravari was rewriting the rules from its Upper West Side base. The boutique introduced New Yorkers to revolutionary designers like Yohji Yamamoto, Issey Miyake, and Comme des Garçons, names that defined the cutting edge long before mainstream fashion caught up. Cheravari didn't just sell clothes, it curated a radical future. Walking through its doors felt like entering another dimension, minimalism, structure, and rebellion woven into every stitch. In a time when style was still regional and raw, Cheravari stood alone. When it shuttered in the mid-90s, it marked the end of an era where fashion wasn't filtered and taste wasn't dictated by likes. Think Big was exactly what the name promised, a store filled with absurdly oversized versions of everyday objects. Giant crayons, enormous sunglasses, clocks the size of tires, all sat proudly on its shelves. It was ridiculous, delightful, and very New York. In the 1980s, the city still made room for playfulness, and Think Big captured that energy perfectly. It wasn't just a novelty store. It was a celebration of imagination. Tourists took photos, kids begged for giant gadgets, and locals stopped in just to smile. Its closure didn't just mean the end of a quirky shop. It marked the slow disappearance of a city where joy didn't need a purpose to exist. In the New York of the 80s and 90s, cinema after dark was something magical. Theaters like the 8th Street Playhouse and the Elgin became sacred spaces for cult classics. Films like the Rocky Horror Picture Show weren't just watched, they were performed by the audience. Props flew through the air, costumes turned aisles into catwalks, and the screen became a mirror of subculture. Midnight screenings weren't just late-night entertainment, they were community rituals. For weirdos, outsiders, and cinephiles, these moments offered belonging and rebellion in equal measure. Today, streaming has made everything convenient, but that electric shared chaos? That's gone, and nothing digital can bring it back. In the 1980s, Times Square was messy, chaotic, and completely unforgettable. Neon signs blinked above peep shows, adult cinemas, souvenir shops, and fast food joints. It was wild, unpredictable, and filled with people who didn't fit anywhere else, and that was the magic. While it was seen by many as dangerous, it pulsed with an authenticity that's nearly impossible to imagine today. You could feel the city's raw heartbeat here. Then came corporate cleanup, Broadway branding, and the arrival of big box entertainment. Safer? Yes. But that electric, untamed soul? Lost forever under layers of LED screens and chain restaurants. Back when crime rates soared and fear gripped subway cars, the guardian angels appeared unarmed volunteers wearing red berets, patrolling trains and neighborhoods with purpose. Founded in 1979, this grassroots group became a powerful symbol of community self-defense in a city many felt had been abandoned by its own government. They weren't perfect, but they were present, often the only deterrent between danger and the public. As crime dropped in the 90s and police presence expanded, their visibility faded. What we lost wasn't just a group of volunteers. It was the spirit of citizens taking safety into their own hands when no one else would. Long before online gaming and home consoles took over, Chinatown Fair on Mott Street was a sanctuary for New York's gamers. It buzzed with the sounds of Street Fighter battles, Dance Dance Revolution rhythms, and the chatter of teenage rivals chasing high scores. There was even a tic-tac-toe playing chicken, a bizarre legend in its own right. This wasn't just an arcade, it was a proving ground, a hangout, and a home for misfits and champions. Though it still exists today in a more sanitized form, the grit and glory of its original incarnation are gone. The soul of the 80s arcade era has been unplugged. Before Chelsea became the capital of polished white cube galleries, places like Fun Gallery in the East Village and Fashion Moda in the Bronx opened their doors to graffiti artists, punk rebels, and boundary-pushing creatives. These weren't just spaces to show art, they were incubators for movements. Basquiat, Keith Haring, and countless others got their start here. They broke rules, painted walls, and turned New York's chaos into beauty. These galleries didn't chase collectors, they chased impact. When they disappeared, they took with them a fearless artistic energy that no glossy exhibit can replicate. What we lost was real rough, loud, and world-changing. The smoky, glitter-streaked basement of the Pyramid Club, legends were born. This East Village dive wasn't just a nightclub, it was a launchpad for drag, performance, art, and LGBTQ+ expression at a time when it was still radical. RuPaul performed here before superstardom. Lady Bunny DJ'd. The vibe was part punk, part drag cabaret, all heart. It was messy, theatrical, unapologetic. Today, drag is mainstream, and queer culture is more visible than ever, but the raw, experimental spirit of Pyramid is irreplaceable. What we lost was not just a club, but a creative explosion that couldn't happen anywhere else or at any other time. In the 80s and 90s, street markets like the one on 26th Street and scattered independent record stores were lifelines for New Yorkers obsessed with culture. You could spend hours digging through crates of vinyl, discovering rare imports or forgotten gems, while the scent of street food and car exhaust hung in the air. These weren't curated boutiques, they were chaotic, unfiltered temples of taste, where collectors mingled with DJs and crate diggers swapped tips like secret codes. When the internet changed how we shop for music, many of these places disappeared. With them went the thrill of the hunt and the joy of getting your hands dirty for the perfect track. Cafes like Cafe Reggio in Greenwich Village were more than places to grab a coffee. They were gathering spots for poets, activists, artists, and wanderers. The lighting was dim, the walls lined with paintings, and the tables always buzzing with conversation. People came to write, to argue, to flirt, to plot revolutions, or just sit in thought with a cappuccino. These spaces didn't have Wi-Fi or Instagrammable corners, they had soul. As chain cafes expanded and rents soared, many of these havens vanished. What we lost wasn't just a place to drink espresso, it was the city's creative heartbeat, beating in time with every stirred spoon. Walk through Washington Square Park or a downtown subway platform in the 80s or 90s, and you'd find a world alive with sound and spectacle. Saxophonists echoing through tunnels, breakdancers spinning on cardboard, poets performing from park benches, and human statues silently demanding your attention. These artists weren't sideshows, they were part of the city's pulse, turning ordinary commutes into moments of magic. Their presence reminded you that New York was alive, unpredictable, and full of hidden talent. As regulations tightened and public spaces commercialized, that spontaneous street energy faded. What we lost wasn't just entertainment, it was the everyday reminder that art lives everywhere. There was a time when every New York neighborhood had its own pizzeria, not a chain, but a corner spot run by a local family. The smell of garlic knots and bubbling mozzarella filled the air as regulars lined up for their usual slice. Places like Ray's, the real one, John's of Bleecker, or Sal and Carmine's, weren't just food joints, they were gathering places. You'd talk to your neighbors, run into someone from high school, or just watch the world go by from a wobbly booth with a greasy paper plate. Today, many of those mom-and-pop spots have vanished, priced out by soaring rents or swallowed by national chains. Some survivors remain, but the golden age of the neighborhood sliced cheap, reliable, and deeply personal is fading. The pizza might still be good, but the heart of it? That's harder to find. New York has always evolved, but not all change feels like progress. In the second half of the 20th century, the city lost some of its most iconic architectural landmarks, and not all of them were accidents. The original Penn Station, demolished in 1963, remains the most notorious loss. A towering bow, art's masterpiece, replaced by a soulless underground terminal. In the 80s and 90s, buildings like the Drake Hotel, the New York Coliseum, and the once majestic Pan Am Building, now the MetLife Building, were either torn down or radically altered. Each demolition chipped away at the city's skyline, replacing history with glass and steel. For longtime New Yorkers, these weren't just buildings, they were anchors, characters in the city's story. What we lost wasn't just architecture. We lost memory, identity, and the sense that some things were built to last. During the 1980s and 1990s, the East Village was dotted with community gardens like the Chico Mendez Mural Garden and Esperanza Garden. These green spaces, often cultivated on vacant lots by local residents, served as communal hubs for gardening, art, and social gatherings. They symbolized grassroots activism and offered a respite from the urban hustle. However, many of these gardens faced demolition due to real estate development pressures, leading to the loss of vital community spaces that once fostered neighborhood cohesion and environmental stewardship. Founded in 1980, ABC No Rio was more than just an art space. It was a bastion of countercultural expression on the Lower East Side. Emerging from the squatter movement, it hosted art exhibitions, punk concerts, and activist meetings, providing a platform for marginalized voices and experimental art forms. The collective ethos of ABC No Rio challenged mainstream art institutions and fostered a sense of community among artists and activists. While the organization continues to exist, the original building was demolished in 2016, marking the end of an era for this iconic cultural landmark. And maybe that's the real question, isn't it? Was New York better back then when it was louder, grittier, messier, but also more human? Or are we just chasing ghosts of a city that changed because we changed too? We'll never get back those drag shows in East Village basements, the smell of hot pizza on a stoop at 2 a.m., or the moment a random street saxophone made your whole day. But remembering them that keeps the soul of old New York alive. If this video sparked a memory or made you feel something, hit like, leave us a comment, and tell us what you miss most. And if you want more videos like this about cities, decades, or stories that time tried to erase, subscribe, and share. Because every time you do, you help keep history on the map.